We're going to be tying up one of the best variations of the band squirmy worm. We'll start with some hot pink thread, snip the excess free, securing the bead in place using some lead-free wire. Helicopter the excess free and continue wrapping to the bend of the hook, at which point we'll take a few wraps forward and grab some stretchy material. Here I'm using a rubber D-rib, however, I would suggest using a stretchy dental band that I've linked in the comments. Create a loop with your material and secure it to the back of the fly. Make sure your loop's secured tightly by taking securing wraps both in front as well as behind your loop and continue towards the head of the fly. Snip one of your excess bands free, once again continuing towards the head of the fly. We'll fold our rubber material backwards, take a few securing wraps towards the head of the fly, and once again create a loop in our rubber band, using your thread to secure it lightly in place at first. This way, by pulling on the opposite end, we can shrink the loop to the size we're looking for. Once happy, secure in place with your thread, and continue wrapping towards the bend of the hook. Snip your excess free, and use your thread to smooth out the body. Finishing at the head of the fly. Hold everything in place by whip finishing, snip your thread free, and paint over everything with some UV resin to add shine and durability to our pattern. Fix in place with the UV light, and grab some spare wire. Use the wire to string it through the two loops that we just created, and open up the loops at the end using a pair of tweezers. Next, we'll grab some squirmy worm material, here I'm using pink, insert it through our loop, and begin pulling the wire to help draw the squirmy worm material through the two loops. They should be quite tight to hold it in place. Once complete, remove the wire, snip the squirmy worm material to length, and this is an improved squirmy worm, suggested by Tim from the Trout and Feather. I've linked his full video in the comments below. It's an excellent pattern that promotes a lot of movement in the water and also can be replaced if the fish chew it up. I would highly suggest giving it a try. And as always, if you'd like to win this one, comment #flies in the comments below. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. This is one of the most popular flies out there, and this particular one has a secret. To tie it, we'll start off with some white thread, secure it to our hook shank, snapping the excess free. We'll continue wrapping backwards until we reach the bend of our hook, and grab some white marabou. Measuring your marabou to be a bit longer than the hook shank, transfer your measurement, and tightly secure it to the back of the fly. With this complete, we'll fold over the marabou, wrap to the bead, folding the marabou back over, and securing it tightly in place. And if you want to win this fly, comment #flies in the comments below. Snip the excess free, adding a single wrap to the back of the marabou to help secure it in place. Next, we'll grab some flash, here I'm using pearl, securing several strands to one side of our fly before folding it over and securing them to the other. Continue wrapping backwards until you reach your tail, snipping them to be a bit longer than our marabou. We'll then grab some brassy wire, here I'm using silver, secure it to the side of your fly, once again wrapping back towards the tail, followed by some white astaz, securing it tightly in place, once again wrapping back towards our tail, before wrapping your thread up to the bead. With this complete, we'll grab our astaz and begin to wrap it forward in close touching spirals, continuing to do so until we reach our thread. At which point, we'll secure it in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, and snipping the excess free. We'll then grab some hackle, here I'm using a grizzly, pulling some excess fibers free, and securing it to the head of your fly, snipping the excess free, and begin to wrap it backwards, adding a few extra wraps towards the head of the fly, before continuing backwards in open spirals. We'll continue to do so until we reach our tail, at which point we'll grab our wire, counter wrapping the hackle to help secure it tightly in place, trying to prevent from trapping any hackle fibers in the process, and continue to do so until you reach your bead. At which point, we'll secure the wire in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind the wire, and helicoptering the excess free. We'll brush everything backwards and use our thread to help give it a more brushed back look, before snipping our excess hackle free and grabbing some white ice dubbing. Create a dubbing noodle and begin wrapping this just in front of your hackle. And of course brush it out to help remove any trapped fibers and give it a nice, buggy look. With this complete, we'll whip finish to hold it all in place, snip our thread free, and this is a highly productive variation of the crystal woolly bugger. And this one even glows in the dark. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
As well as behind, and snipping our excess free. We'll then take our fingers and use them to splay out our pheasant tail tips to form some legs. Once happy, we'll fold over the remaining pheasant tail fibers, secure them just behind the bead, and snip the excess free. Whip finish to hold everything in place. The pheasant tail is a classic pattern that is one of the most known and used patterns out there. It makes for a great general pattern, imitating mayflies and caddis exceptionally well. You can find this pattern on my website, but if you would like your chance to win this fly, comment #flies, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
If you're tired of your caddis pattern sinking, then today's fly pattern is for you. To tie it, we'll start off with some lateral scale, or any flash of your choice. Snip a small section free, securing it tightly to your hook shank, and wrapping well into the bend of our hook, laying down a smooth thread base to help with our following steps. At which point, we'll reverse our thread's direction back up towards the head of the fly, once again laying down an even thread base to make our next step a little bit easier. At which point, we'll grab our flash and begin wrapping it forward in close, touching spirals, with each wrap slightly overlapping the last, so we don't build up too much bulk, but also help hold the previous wrap down so it doesn't stick up. And we'll continue to do so until we reach our thread, at which point we'll secure it tightly in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, before snipping your excess free. Paint over with some UV resin, adding both shine and durability to the pattern, before fixing it in place with a UV light, wrapping back over it slightly, before grabbing some foam. Here I'm using a 2mm in the color tan. Snip a small section free and trim up the tips to be shaped like a triangle, and once complete, it should look something like this. We'll measure it to length so it sticks out a bit further than the bend of our hook, before securing it tightly in place, starting with some loose wraps and wrapping tighter and tighter as we go. You can also add a securing wrap behind it before wrapping over the top of it to help lock it down. Once happy, we'll snip the excess free using our thread to cover up our tag ends, and wrapping back into the foam slightly until we reach the hook point. At which point, we'll grab some poly yarn, snip a small piece free, and secure it just in front of our foam. Pull in the tag ends so they don't stick out past the hook eye before securing them tightly in place. Trim it to length, being a bit longer than our foam, and grab some elk hair. Snip a small clump free and brush it out to give it a less buggy look, removing some of the underhair fibers as well as the shorter ones to help them stack a little more evenly. Insert it into our stacker, stack it up before carefully removing it and measuring it to length, once again being just a bit longer than our foam. Secure it to the top side of your fly by taking a loose wrap around it before locking it down. Secure it tightly in place, starting off with loose wraps towards the elk hair so we don't splay it apart before wrapping tighter and tighter up towards the hook eye, ensuring that it won't spin around our hook shank. Snip your excess free and cover up your tag ends, laying down a smooth thread base for our final step. We'll then grab some saddle hackle. Here I'm using the color brown. Pull a single piece free, secure it tightly in place, wrapping backwards towards our elk hair. With this complete, we'll bring our thread forward and begin to hackle it around the head of our fly in close, touching spirals, and we'll continue to do so until we reach our thread. Secure it tightly in place. Whip finish to hold it all together. Snip your thread free, and this is a caddis pattern that I like to use in fast running water, as it's nearly impossible to sink and does an incredibly good job at mimicking the profile. But wherever you fish it, it's sure to do the trick, either fished alone or with a dropper underneath. And if you'd like to win this one, comment #flies in the comments below. So thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
We're going to be tying up a Buggy or hare's ear. We'll start off with some tan thread, secure it to our hook shank, and snap the excess free. Continue wrapping till you reach the bend of your hook, then grab a rabbit mask. Snip a pinch of fibers free, measure them to length, and secure them to the back of your fly, securing the tag ends tightly to help build up the body and bring your thread forward. We'll then grab some gold wire, inserting it into our bead and wrapping back towards the tail, at which point we'll bring our thread forward and grab some ostrich herl. Here I'm using white. Secure the ostrich herl to your hook shank, once again wrapping back towards your tail, at which point we'll grab some hare's ear, create a dubbing noodle, and begin to wrap it forward in close touching spirals, building up a transition and stopping just short of our bead. At which point we'll grab our ostrich herl and begin wrapping it forward in open spirals, being careful not to pull too hard and break the ostrich off. Doing so until we reach our thread. Secure it tightly. Snip your excess free, grabbing your gold wire and counter wrapping the ostrich herl to add some durability and flash to our pattern. Secure the wire in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind the wire, and helicoptering the excess free. And of course, brush everything out to give it a nice buggy. Snip a small clump free, about 8 to 10 fibers, securing it to the head of your fly, once again wrapping back towards our body. Before creating another dubbing noodle, this time a bit looser than the first, and begin wrapping it forward in close touching spirals, continuing to add to our transition until we reach the head of the fly, adding a single thread wrap in front of it to help brush it back, and of course, brush everything out to give it a nice buggy look. Next, we'll fold over our turkey tail, secure it tightly to the head of our fly, followed by our flashaboo, securing both in front as well as behind, and snipping the excess free. Whip finish to hold everything tightly in place. Snip your thread free and paint over the back with some UV resin, adding some durability and shine to our pattern. And this is how I personally like to tie hare's ears. Of course it's a bit buckier, but specifically I tie these to represent the profile of mayflies, and they work especially well in the spring and summer months. and I'd highly recommend giving it a try, both in natural, olive, as well as brown. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
This fly can help you catch more fish. To start, we'll grab some olive thread and secure it to our hook shank, keeping the scraps for a later step. Continue wrapping just before the bend of the hook and reverse your thread to the hook point. We'll then grab some microfibbets. However, here I'm using some synthetic deer hair. It makes for a versatile replacement that can be used in multiple situations. Select out 3 fibers and measure them to be about the length of your hook shank. Secure them carefully to the back of your fly, ensuring that you don't wrap too far into the bend of your hook. Once complete, snip your excess free and secure them tightly to the hook shank, ensuring that they don't move around. With this complete, we'll grab our strand of thread we just set to the side, string it through our hook, and use your fingers to help separate the microfibbets. Carefully sliding your thread up the hook shank in between them to help create separation. Secure your thread in place and snip the excess free. Secure tightly, but make sure you don't wrap back on the microfibbets. This step helps ensure that they splay out nicely, like a mayfly's tail. Next, we'll grab some olive dubbing. Here I'm using a PMD color, create a dubbing noodle, and begin wrapping this up the fly, creating a smooth transition towards the hook eye. Be sure to add or tighten your dubbing as needed. Once complete, we'll lay down a thread base towards our hook eye, returning and wrapping back on top of the dubbing slightly. Next, we'll grab a CDC feather, here I'm using a sulfur color, and measure it to be about the length of our body. Secure using your thread, wrapping back towards the dubbing. There's a few ways you can tie this fly. You can do as I'm doing here, wrapping forward on our CDC, folding it back, and securing it just as we've done before. This will help utilize your extra CDC and add a bit more flotation to your fly. So if you'd like to use this as a dry fly, I would highly suggest adding this extra step. However, I typically use this as an emerger behind a second dry fly and don't mind if it sinks. So I'll simply snip this excess free, which makes for a cleaner looking fly pattern. Our next step is to grab some more dubbing, create a dubbing noodle, and begin wrapping it forward to continue our transition towards the head of the fly, having it slope down once we reach the hook eye. With this complete, we'll whip finish to hold everything together. Snip the excess free and secure in place with some UV resin. And this is the RS2. It's a highly versatile fly that I've caught fish using it as a nymph, an emerger, and even a dry fly. And I would highly suggest giving it a shot this spring. And if you'd like to win this one, be sure to comment below #flies. And I will see you in the next one.
This fly is an absolute
This is an articulated game changer. It has an incredible movement in the water that mimics the natural forage almost perfectly, and it definitely lives up to its name. If you'd like to win a dozen of these flies, comment #mainlyflies in the comments below. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. Today, we're going to be and build up a prominent head. Snip your thread free, and finally trimming your poly yarn to be slightly longer than your hackle. And this is the royal wulff. It was my favorite childhood fly that works exceptionally well as an attractor pattern for brook trout as well as cutthroat, and I'd highly encourage you to give it a shot. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.